Here's the lesson for contemporary math, section 1E, critical thinking in everyday life. So the first thing we want to do is just very quickly finish the following. So we have this little statement here. It's more than anything, critical thinking requires experience. More so than anything, critical thinking requires experience. I think the best example that you could ever think of is driving. You have to be critically thinking while you are driving down a city road, down a major high interstate, and you get better at driving if you have more experience. But if you do not have a lot of experience, we have some tips here to help you think about becoming a better critical thinker. So we have, you need to either read or listen carefully, look for hidden assumptions. You should identify the real issue. As you saw back with the fallacy section 1A, the real issue can get buried. Understand all the options. You can watch for fine print or missing information, and always ask questions about missing information. Ask yourself, are other conclusions possible? And finally, don't miss the big picture. So what we will do is we will take a few moments to look at these next three examples and analyze them. So in the first scenario, 1A here, we have a statement that says half the people at a party are women and half the people at a party love chocolate. Does it follow that 1/4 of the people at the party are women who love chocolate? Well, if you can find one specific scenario where that doesn't work, then the answer has to be no. So what happens if you take all the people at this party and half of them are women? Well, we could draw a different line here and say, okay, well, the people who like chocolate, the half of the people who like chocolate are here. And you can clearly see that that is not 1/4 of the pie. The overlap here with people who are women and like chocolate is not 1/4. So, no. It does not follow at all. For 1B, we have a scenario that states half of a country's exports consist of corn. So we've got something that looks kind of like this. Of all of the exports here, half of them are corn. The second piece of this puzzle states that half the corn is from the state of Caledonia. So half of the corn, we'll say this half, is from Caledonia. So half of a half is in fact 1/4. So the question asks, does it follow that 1/4 of exports consist of corn from Caledonia? Yes. The very next example is more of a statement, right? We don't have a question to answer. All that we know is the statement that says, I supported increased military spending because we need a strong America. But the assumption that spending more on military makes a stronger America does not logically follow. Here, increased military spending just means we have a better military. That doesn't necessarily improve the country's morale or making America stronger. It just means we have a better military. Here in example 3, we have the statements, people who eliminate meat from their diet risk severe nutritional deficiencies. Eating meat is by far the easiest way to consume complete protein plus many other essential nutrients all in one food source. It makes sense. Our ancestors have been meat eaters for thousands of years. There are multiple questions that you can ask in this scenario, such as, does the speaker work for the meat industry? If someone works for the meat industry, well, you know what? This would absolutely be some of the verbiage they would use. What if I'm a vegetarian? I think this question is important. What can you suggest if I'm a vegetarian? Third, what are some health risks of eating too much meat? There's high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So I think here you just need to identify the real issue. Let's look at this fourth scenario, buying versus leasing. You're deciding whether to buy a car for $18,000 or to accept a lease agreement. The lease entails a $1,000 initiation fee plus monthly payments of $240 for 36 months. Under the lease agreement, you are responsible for service on the car and insurance. At the end of the lease, you may purchase the car for $9,000. To be successful in this scenario and be a critical thinker, you need to understand all the options. So you could just go ahead and buy the car for $18,000. Or you could lease the car for $1,000 initiation fee plus $240 times 36 months plus another $9,000 at the end. I mean, if your goal is to just own the car, you'd have to pay another $9,000 at the end. So if you multiply all these things and add them all up, it's $18,640. Well, if your intention is to own a car, you probably just want to buy it outright. But if after 3 years you want to let the car go and trade it in and drive something different, something newer, and not have to worry about all the maintenance that comes with the car after 3 years, this is only a $9,640 option, which is significantly cheaper than buying a car. So some other things you could do to understand all of your options are talk with someone who has experience with leasing or buying, right? The number one thing you can do to help become a critical thinker is have the experience. If you don't have the experience, go talk with someone who does. Maybe you can talk with people about getting a used car and what that entails. All right, we have a couple more examples to get through on this slide. So example number 5 here. We have, through a random selection of more than 20 million email addresses, you've been selected as the winner of our grand prize, a 2-week vacation to the Bahamas. To claim your prize, please call our toll-free number. Have your credit card ready for identification and small processing fee. In this situation, you would want to be reading all the fine print. There's probably no way for anybody on the other end of a phone call would be able to tell me, hey, yeah, we'll just give you this if you give me your credit card number. Absolutely no way. If you have to give your credit card or keep your credit card ready, there are lots of things like identity theft or, what is this processing fee about? Maybe they end up charging you thousands of dollars for this processing fee. It just rings really, really bad. So make sure you do all the fine print. Read all the fine print. In our second to last scenario here, we have newspapers have been a mainstay of American life for 2 centuries. However, their very existence is being threatened by internet news sources. There's no substitute for newspapers as a local news source. Furthermore, for national issues, citizens need the investigative reporting of a trained and independent newspaper journalist rather than biased opinions of internet bloggers. So, in order to help you think critically here, you would want to consider if other conclusions are possible. Part of this statement or this paragraph here is saying the biased opinions of internet bloggers. Well, what about reporters? Don't reporters also have a bias? There are good and bad internet bloggers. What about younger generation versus an older generation, where the younger generation would be technologically inclined and the older generation would want still the hard copies, aka change is bad, that sort of stuff. Our last scenario here, we have this little M&M scenario. Let's take a look at 7A. Suppose you reach into a candy bowl filled with 15 red M&Ms and 15 yellow M&Ms. How many candies must you select without looking to be certain you get at least one red M&M? Well, in this sort of situation, you have to consider like a worst case scenario. Let's say you have the worst luck in the world. It could be that you reach into this candy bowl, first M&M, you pick out it's red, you win. But can you be certain that the first one you pick out every time, if you have 15 red and 15 yellow, is going to be red? The answer is no. So you have to start thinking. Worst case scenario, I pick out a yellow and another yellow and another yellow. How many M&Ms do you have to pull out of the bowl before you can be 100% sure that you get a red one? Well, if you pull out all the yellows, it could happen. All 15 yellows for your 15 picks, and then you pull out a red. You have to pick out 16 to be 100% sure that you will get a red M&M. And this type of thinking also plays into the next 2 scenarios. So here's 7B. Suppose you reach into a candy bowl with 15 kisses and 15 starbursts. How many must you select to be certain you get 1 kiss and 1 starburst? Well, it could be 2. Right? If you pull out a kiss on the first pick, you pull out a starburst on the second pick. But what happens if you get all 15 kisses in your first 15 picks, or all 15 starbursts in your first 15 picks? Well, that's not going to work out that well. But if you pick out all of the kisses the first time, you know the 16th one will be a starburst, and now you have at least one of each. So again, the answer here for part B will be 16. For 7C, it's very similar. Kisses and starbursts. How many candies must you select to be certain you get 2 of the same? Well, in the worst case scenario, if you pick out a kiss and a starburst, whatever comes third, you will have 2 of the same. So in this scenario, you will only need to pick out 3 to be sure you get 2 that are exactly the same. That concludes our lesson for section 1E. Good luck.